welcome to this week's bill update from Disability Rights South Dakota. Like previous videos, you're encouraged to contact Disability Rights South Dakota if you have any questions about any of the legislation that we discuss here today. Our number is 605-224-8294. So, let's jump right into it. First bill that we're talking about today is House Bill 1082. Change the eligibility requirements and the exempt value of a property tax relief program for disabled veterans and surviving spouses. This bill increases the exemption amount of the value of a dwelling from $150,000 to $200,000 and adds a tax index factor to the statute so that the exemption amount can automatically change with inflation. This bill has been discussed and passed through the House Military and Veterans Affairs Committee as amended, and now has been referred to the Senate Taxation Committee. It has not yet been scheduled for hearing with that committee. It was scheduled to be heard on February 7th, but the LRC website has not been updated for information about that meeting. So keep an eye on this bill for upcoming hearings on House Bill 1082. House Bill 1085, specify the venue of appeal to a circuit court for persons committed to a mental health facility. This bill adds a provision to the appeal and the commitment to a circuit court of the county in which the mental health facility is located if the appellant is committed to that facility. So if a person with mental health concerns has been committed to a facility in a particular county, they can appeal that commitment to the circuit court where they are residing and receiving services and not have to go back to the county of their residence or where they'd come from. This bill passed through the House Judiciary Committee and that has now been referred to the Senate Judiciary Committee. They have not yet scheduled this bill for hearing. House Bill 1093, make an appropriation to provide a grant for the construction of a facility to provide certain health facilities and services. This bill is an appropriation from the general fund of a sum of $8 million to the Department of Social Services for purposes of providing a grant to assist in the construction of a facility that would provide all of the following: a specialty rehabilitation pediatric hospital, a specialty school for children under the age of 21, an intermediate healthcare facility for children under the age of 21, and an outpatient rehabilitation pediatric service. This bill has been referred to the Joint Committee on Appropriations, who have not yet scheduled it for hearing. House Bill 1138. Establish a sales tax exemption for certain disabled veterans. An exemption from retail sales and service tax liability from sales of tangible personal property, any product transferred electronically, and services to a veteran who is rated as permanently and totally disabled from a service-connected disability. The amount of gross receipts exempt under this chapter in any year for an eligible veteran may not exceed $25,000. This bill was referred to the House Taxation Committee, who then sent it to the 41st day, thereby effectively killing the bill. It will not be heard or brought up any further in the 2024 session. House Bill 1144. Provide for a study of the Community Hope, Opportunity, Independence, Careers, Empowerment, and Success Waiver Program, also known as the Choices Waiver, and to provide an appropriation therefor. This bill states that there is hereby appropriated from the general fund the sum of $450,000 to the Department of Legislative Audit for the purposes of hiring a contractor to study state and federal laws, regulations, and services relating to the operation and administration of the Choices Waiver Program within the Department of Human Services. This bill was heard before the House Health and Human Services Committee. That committee amended the bill to substitute $1 for the previous $450,000 amount that was outlined in the original statute. The bill was then referred to the Joint Committee on Appropriations, where another amount, if any, would be identified. The Joint Committee on Appropriations has not yet scheduled this bill for discussion. House Bill 1165, institute procedures for addressing the bullying of a student. This bill establishes procedures for educators to communicate with parents and collaboratively address issues of bullying in a school. This bill was referred to the House Education Committee. They tabled the bill on Friday, February 2nd. That means that the bill will be dead unless the full body orders the committee to send it to the floor of the House for consideration by the full body of the House of Representatives in the state of South Dakota. House Bill 1202 establishes procedures for the termination of services by a provider through the Choices Waiver Program. This bill purports to limit the time to complete an appeal of terminations from waiver services from a provider. It limits the basis for an appeal of terminations to only procedural grounds. And in some cases, termination of Choices Waiver provider supports are immediate, subject to only certain notice requirements. This bill has been referred to the House Health and Human Services Committee. They will hear this bill on Tuesday, February 13th, from 7:45 to 9:45 in room 412. House Bill 1220. And allow an appeal of a decision of the Department of Education regarding special education or related services by civil action against the department. This bill would extend the time frame that an appellant may appeal the decision of an administrative hearing to either federal or state court. Previously, an appellant had 90 days to appeal such a decision. Under this legislation, an appellant would have 30 days. This bill was heard today on Monday, February 12th, where it was passed by the House Judiciary Committee and will go to the full House floor. Once heard there, if passed by the full House, it will be assigned to the Senate for consideration. House Bill 1230. Amend provisions regarding reports to be done for a guardianship or conservatorship and provide a penalty therefor. This bill would make it a Class 2 misdemeanor for a person who knowingly provides false or misleading information in a guardianship report or conservator accounting to the court. This bill was heard today on Monday, February 12th, where the House Judiciary Committee sent it to the 41st day, thereby killing the bill. It's important to note that during that committee hearing that the prime sponsor had submitted an amendment that changed the bill, effectively removing the criminal exposure to a guardian or conservator, and stated that the accounting or report should be in a standardized form as provided by the Unified Judicial Service in South Dakota. House Bill 1241. Modify the amount of time allowed to an employee to vote in any state election. This bill extends the time an employee may take from work from 2 hours to 4 hours and protects an employee from acts of an employer for taking this time to vote in state and federal elections. This bill has been referred to the House State Affairs Committee, where it has been scheduled for hearing on Monday, February 12th from 7:45 to 9:45 in room 414. Senate Bill 28. Modify tax refunds for elderly persons and persons with a disability to make an appropriation therefore and to declare an emergency. This bill would identify a sum of $425,000 to the Department of Revenue for providing refunds for real property tax and sales tax to elderly and disabled persons. A portion of the appropriated sum may not exceed $20,000 for administrative costs. Refund percentages are dependent on household characteristics, whether it's a single or multiple member household and other factors. The Senate referred this bill to the Senate Committee on Appropriations. They referred the bill to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. The Joint Committee on Appropriations amended Senate Bill 28 and then passed it unanimously. Both the Senate and House passed Senate Bill 28 unanimously, and it has been signed by both the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House, and it is now sitting on the governor's desk for her signature. Senate Bill 46, to authorize the disclosure of referral status by the Department of Human Services personnel. This bill states that, except as otherwise provided for in state statutes, the Department of Human Services may disclose information to referring individuals and entities for the purpose of relaying the status of that referral. This bill has been passed by the Senate committees uncontested and sent to the House of Representatives. The House has referred the bill to the House Health and Human Services Committee, where it will be heard on Tuesday, February 13th, from 7:45 a.m. to 9:45 in room 412. Senate Bill 99. Modified provisions pertaining to the applying for an absentee ballot application. This bill would be that an absentee ballot provision allowing for an application for absentee ballot up to the time of the voting office closure or by 5 p.m. on the day prior to the election day, whichever is later. This bill was referred to the this bill was referred to the Senate Judiciary Committee, who sent it to the 41st day. Senate Bill 119, permit the use of tribal identification cards when registering to vote. This bill would add tribal identification card as a valid form of ID to vote in South Dakota election and defines a valid tribal identification card. This bill was sent to the Senate State Affairs Committee, where it was amended to state, at the request of federally recognized Indian tribes located wholly or partially within the state, the Secretary of State shall inform the tribe of criteria needed to enter into a memorandum of understanding to allow the tribal identification card number to be used on the application for voter registration. The bill was passed unanimously by the committee after it was amended, as stated, and placed on the Senate's consent calendar. However, the legislation was removed from the consent calendar. It was debated by the full Senate chamber. The Senate amended the bill to become effective on January 1st, 2025. Senate Bill 119 has been sent to the House and referred to the House Committee on State Affairs. That committee has not yet scheduled the bill for hearing within that committee. Senate Bill 186, modify provisions pertaining to the voting rights of members of an Indian tribe. This was a hog house or vehicle bill, basically a placeholder for additional language to be added in under Senate Bill 186 at a later time. However, no additional language was ever added to this bill and has now been withdrawn by the prime sponsor. Senate Bill 209, make an appropriation for grants to assisted living centers and nursing facilities for costs related to telemedicine. This act would appropriate $5 million in federal fund expenditure authority for the expenditure of State Fiscal Recovery Fund American Rescue Plan Act monies to the Department of Health for the purposes of providing grants to assisted living centers and nursing facilities licensed in accordance with state law to purchase and install technology and infrastructure for telemedicine. This bill was referred to the Senate Health and Human Services Committee, who then in turn referred the bill to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. That committee has not yet heard this bill in their committee. And finally, Senate Joint Resolution 501. This bill proposes and submits to the voters at the next general election an amendment to the Constitution of the state of South Dakota, authorizing the state to impose work requirements on certain individuals who are eligible for expanded Medicaid. This is not a binding statute or law. This is merely a statement from the Senate with an intention, a desire to propose and submit to the voters. This bill purports to submit for consideration by the voters a springing South Dakota constitutional amendment to create a work requirement for Medicaid beneficiaries who have not been diagnosed as being physically or mentally disabled. The Senate referred Senate Joint Resolution 501 to the Senate State Affairs Committee, where it passed out of that body on a 7-1 vote. Having passed through that committee, it was then brought to the full body of the Senate, who also passed it. The bill is now crossed over to the House, who referred the matter to the House State Affairs Committee. That committee has not yet scheduled this bill for a hearing. And that's it. That's all the bills that we'll be going through this week. If you have any questions over this bill or any others that are before the South Dakota House of Representatives or South Dakota State Senate, please give us a call at 605-224-8294. We'd love to talk to you about it.